Chapter 3. The Garden Gate. The man was alone, and the silence was not yet called loneliness. We walked the paths of Eden beside him, unseen, unheard, yet closer than his own shadow. The air itself welcomed us, nothing barred the way. We had watched galaxies kindle, but we had never walked beneath trees that bowed to offer their fruit. He woke beneath a sky that had never known storm and a sun that had never scorched. The dust still clung to his shoulders in the shape of the hands that had formed him. He stood, stretched, and the first thing he did was laugh, not because anything was funny, but because breath itself was joy. Then he began to walk. I followed the line of his footprints in the soft earth. They were deep, as though the ground itself wanted to remember him. Every step he took, grass sprang up behind him greener than before. He did not notice. He was too busy listening to the rivers. 4 rivers poured out from one hidden spring beneath the mountain of God, and their voices were the first prophecy the earth ever heard. Pishon slipped away first, lazy and golden, coiling through Havilah, where the finest gold lay scattered like spilled coins of the kingdom, where bdellium wept fragrant tears and onyx stones watched the water pass with dark, unblinking eyes. That same gold would one day be beaten into a calf at the foot of Sinai, and into the cherubim that hovered above the mercy seat. It would crown kings and buy betrayers, and every ounce of it began here, innocent, singing. Gihon took the second path, plunging deep and dark around the whole land of Cush, bearing the promise of ebony, ivory, and ostrich plume, of kingdoms that would one day sell sons and daughters beneath a sun that had never learned mercy. I saw the chains already glinting in its depths, though the man who drank from it now would never live to hear their clank. The third river was the Tigris, running swift and bright east of Ashur, leaping over stones that would one day be hewn into altars for child sacrifice, and into the ziggurat, where men would try to build their own stair to heaven. Its laughter sounded almost cruel to me that morning. And the fourth was the Euphrates, broad and slow, mother of cities, wet nurse to every empire that would ever lift a spear against the city of God. I watched its current carry tiny seeds of wheat that would feed Babylon and Rome, and every proud tower that would one day rot back into its mud. All 4 began in Eden, pure as the breath of God. None of them would leave it the same. He knelt at the single river before it divided, cupped the water in hands that had never known a callous, and drank. The water went into him and became blood, became tears he had not yet learned to shed, became the same liquid that would one day pour from a spear-driven side outside Jerusalem. For one heartbeat, I heard the music again, faint, almost lost beneath the rushing of waters that already knew where they were going.
Look at him, Zeruel. He drinks living water that will never run out, walks beneath trees that bear fruit 12 manners of months, breathes air that has never carried a curse, and the only sentence spoken over him is, "Do not." One locked door in a palace with 1,000 open halls. Tell me again why the single prohibition matters more than every gift.
Because the gifts only remain gifts if the door stays locked, because love that cannot say no is not love.
And loneliness that cannot say no, is that love?
He pointed. The man stood in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by living creatures that had never learned fear. They came to him the way iron filings come to a lodestone. Lion, leopard, elephant, raven, every kind the 6th word had spoken. They circled him, curious, waiting. He looked at the lion and said,
"You will be called Lion."
The lion dipped his great head as though the name had always belonged to him. He looked at the raven and said,
"You will be called Raven."
The bird answered with a cry that sounded almost like agreement. One by one he named them, thousands upon thousands. Names rolled off his tongue like he had rehearsed them from eternity. Cow, horse, serpent, eagle, fish, rabbit. Each creature accepted its name and went away content, but none of them answered back with his.
He is looking for something that looks back and says, Adam.
I felt it too, the ache that had no name yet. The man walked among the rivers and the beasts, and everything obeyed him, everything praised him, everything fed him. Yet when the sun reached its highest and the shadows stood straight beneath the trees, he sat down beneath a fig and put his head in his hands, not in despair, not yet, only in the first faint awareness that something was missing. The eyes turned to me, blazing with unshed tears.
Tell me the plan allows this to go on forever. Tell me God, who said, very good, is content to leave him half alive.
I wanted to answer. I opened my mouth and found only the echo of the command the man himself had received that morning. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. The man had nodded then, as though death were only a word. He did not know yet that words from God are never only words. The gaze followed mine to the tree in the midst of the garden. It stood apart, neither more beautiful nor less, its fruit glowing softly like every other tree, yet different. Around it the air itself seemed to listen.
One tree, one test, one refusal already planted in the heart of paradise. Why, Zeruel? Why not simply remove it? Why give him the capacity to reach if reaching will kill him?
I had no answer that satisfied even me. Only the memory of the throne's earlier declaration, love that cannot be refused is not love. I repeated it like a shield.
Then perhaps love should be stronger than the refusal.
Below us the man rose, brushed the dust from his knees, and walked on alone. The animals followed at a distance now, as though even they sensed the gathering shadow. Neither of us moved to follow. Some borders, once seen, are harder to cross than others.